Yeah, I always thought that we should do a movie right from the get-go. Once we kind of made the decision to wrap things up, the notion in my mind was we should do a movie. But it was a case of doing it when, and would everybody want to be involved, and would it work? So it was definitely a case of putting it on the shelf for a while, because you don't want to do a movie right after the series, because what's the point, right? So it was just a matter of kind of finding the time, and also, really trying to be smart and objective about it and say, will this work? Because I didn't want to do it for the sake of doing it, and I didn't want to do it if we didn't think we could make it good and make it worthwhile. So it took some time away, but we had talked, David and Virginia and I, we all liked the idea of doing a movie at some point down the road. Then, after a couple of years, started having meetings about it, and if we were going to do it, when would we do it? And we kind of started picking targets on the horizon. And then it came down to, well, nothing matters if we can't make a good script. So then, I reached out to original writers from the series to say, let's build a script. And some were busy doing other things, and some were able to come and participate. And so, myself and two of the original guys from the story department started kicking around story ideas. And I ended up writing the movie with Andrew Carr and myself. Andrew is one of the original writers from season one. He was there for every season. And as well as Andrew Reggett, who we brought in because he has more long-form experience. And it can be tricky to convert a known 22-minute project into something that was 90 minutes. So it was a matter of saying, well, let's try and write something and see if we think this can work. Because if we can't put a script together that's going to work, then nothing else matters. So after writing for about a year and a half, that's when we felt comfortable, like, okay, this was going to work. This is feeling right. I mean, it was tricky to get there. We were writing stuff and saying, well, this kind of works, but it kneecaps the whole thing here, and this is too much like a TV show. And then this was like, well, it's not enough like a TV show. It's too different. So yeah, it took a while, but when we got there, when we could see the structure and say, I think this is going to work, that's when we started really chasing it down. The tricky thing about it is finding a way to provide everything that people liked about the show, that kind of, low level, I mean, in a lot of ways it was a pretty quiet show. But you also have to raise the stakes and make it worth doing a feature film and worth paying money and sitting for 90 minutes to see. So you have to find that tightrope there. So we did raise the stakes, and we found something that was realistic. You don't want to have a meteor hurtling towards the city or alien invasions or something. You wanted to keep it real, so it has to be something that did raise the stakes, make it a real danger, but at the same time make it something that people could relate to, and you could see that this would really happen. And I think we were able to land on that tightrope. The pace was a little slower. We were doing fewer pages per day, but not by a lot. For me personally, it was a much slacker pace because, I only had one job to do really while we were shooting the movie, and that was to act in the movie, because my writing had already been done at the front end, and I'm not going to be editing for a month or so. So for me, and I first learned the lesson when I did No Clue, because when you're doing a series, it was always a case of anytime there was a camera turnaround, you have something you have to do. That's why I had an office back here. I'd run from here to there. I'd work on a script while we were acting in another one, and then at night I would go edit another one. So there was always something that you had to keep moving because there's another episode that has to come. With the movie, for me personally, it's a much easier pace because a lot of my duties are done ahead of time. Another batch of my duties won't be done till after. So I got to sit down and kind of go on Twitter, go on Instagram, kick around, I enjoy acting because it's performing, and I kind of consider myself a performer first. Writing is the most laborious. It's the hardest thing for me. It's the hardest of the duties because you kind of can't get up and walk away from it. It has to be done by a certain time, and you have to, while every part of you is telling you to just quit and walk away, you have to, there's one party that says, no, you can't. You have to make this make sense, even though it's really hard. producing is just a matter of putting your head down, doing what needs to be done, whatever comes down the pike. So that's kind of interesting because it's something different every day. And then the thing that surprised me is when I started directing, I didn't expect to enjoy directing as much as I do, and I fell in love with it. And I haven't directed anything now for 3 years, and I'm getting very itchy to direct something again. In the Taxman episode, when the Taxman is taking kind of offense to Oscar yelling at him, and I say to him, don't take it personal. He's cranky with everybody. I saw him once yell at a butterfly, called it a son of a bitch, and told it to get out of his garden. That has a nice rhythm to it. It has a nice sentiment. It says everything you need to know about the character of Oscar in a very quick, natural way. Like, if you hear that phrase, you kind of know. I mean, that whole scene I kind of like because Oscar is also, he's railing about nothing that he needs to rail about. He gets the word discrepancy mixed up with crepancy. He's wondering, he's getting angry because the guy's looking at some crepancies. And also, it's the beginning of him claiming to, pay everybody's salary with his taxes. So that scene I really like, but that particular line about the butterfly calling it a son of a bitch and telling it to get out of his garden, to me sums up a character really well. I'll go out of my way if I can to run over and say hi to somebody. You don't know how far they've come. They've gone out of their way. They've gone out of their way to come here and see the place, and to me that's very special. To me, it really, it's a constant reminder that we created a show that kind of touched people in a way that would make them want to do that. Go out of their way just to come here and somehow get a piece of the place. Says a lot, and I can't imagine being of a mind that's like, wanting to stay away from those people or keeping them away. You got to keep them way out of the shot. Sometimes we've had to scoot. We're shooting that way. You're in the TV show. You got to scoot along. But other than that, I mean, it's flattering. It's humbling. It's jaw-dropping sometimes when you see the amount of people that'll come through. Every day we were having Kickstarter people on. But they were all very cool people. They were all genuinely excited to be here. Because they were involved in the Kickstarter project to begin with because they liked the show and they're fans of the show, and here they were on set, so you could see them be excited and you could see them just appreciating being here, and it's hard for you not to appreciate that back. So it was a great experience, and all the actors, when we were coming through, everybody was excited to go get their pictures taken and with the people, and it was just a good experience all around. It was a very positive experience all around. We never targeted anybody, because I think once you start targeting, I don't know, it becomes, I always felt that there was an authenticity to Corner Gas. That people responded to Corner Gas because we weren't selling them anything, and we didn't have an agenda. We were just doing something that we thought was good and funny, because kind of we didn't think anybody was going to watch. So we just did what we did a show that we would be proud of, because that's all you can control. And so as a result, the show was authentic in a lot of ways. And that resonates with everybody, with kids, with teenagers, with seniors, with business people, with rural people. Authenticity is rare. You don't come across it that often, especially I think in show business where it's mostly smoke and mirrors and it's a real sales game. And so Corner Gas was a show that I think people could tell right away they don't have an agenda. And as a result, we got big numbers because we had a wide demographic, because that appeals to everybody. I remember one day Nancy and I in Vancouver, within a span of about a minute and a half, this happened. We walked out the door of a store, and there was a little girl about 5 years old who looked up and recognized us from TV and was kind of all excited that she watches the show and here's the people from the show. She was like 5, and we talked to her for a little bit. We went about a half a block, and there was a lady who was about 175 on a walker. "I know you from TV," she said. "I watch your show all the time," and we chatted to her for a minute. And then we walked to the end of the block, and a pickup truck came around the corner, and it had 3 guys in the pickup truck that just looked like hoods, just thugs. One guy had a neck tattoo that was all flames. And he looked at us and he said, "Corner Gas fucking rocks." And I said to Nancy, well, that's everybody there. The best perk is every now and then you get to bypass a lineup to something. That's the greatest. If you ever get in a situation where there's 200 people lined up and somebody says, hey, come around here to the back, that's the best feeling in the world. That's worth every bit of staying up late writing scripts. Like 99.9% of the time, it's just great. The only time that I kind of don't like it is there's a small percentage of people that are back slappers. They'll come up and the way they start the conversation is slap you in the back. That drives me nuts. Hey, boom. Like, what are you, a salesman from the 40s? What are you doing? No, things went very smoothly. I mean, there were things that you had to muscle into place. That's always going to happen. I think, you make a plan and things go, every now and then something goes sideways. But, when you're doing something like this, it would be easy for a lot of things to go sideways. And for the most part, things went very smoothly. And we got our days for the most part. There was only a couple times when we didn't, when we had to push a scene to another time and restack the deck a little bit. But that could easily happen way more than it did. The weather cooperated. When we were shooting indoors, that's when the torrential rains came. And when we came outside to shoot, things, for the most part, cleared up. And, we got lucky that way. Lucky, blessed, call it what you will. Everybody's different. I love a studio. Because you feel like you're in show business. It feels like, oh, where the hell am I? Paramount, 1930. It feels like you're in showbiz. Same reason I like a nightclub. I still like and playing live theaters and stuff. Like when you're backstage and you hear the audience out there, it's kind of like every dream I had as a kid. It reminds you you're living your dream. That's what I feel like with a studio. It reminds me I'm living my dream. When you walk behind the set and you just see the bare plywood walls and the sandbags and cables. We all loved the idea of working with people who were familiar with the project. And so, and we had a great crew during the series. And so anybody who was here and available that worked on the series, we snapped up. A, because they're great people, and B, because they're very, very good at what they do, and C, because they know the project. And they all have a fondness for the project. They all want to see it succeed. So, and it's just great, being able to hang with these guys again, because for 6 years they were, part of our life every day. We'd spend 11, 12 hours a day together. The Ruby just came about kind of, like the notion was, I went through a few diamonds. I went through emerald and I went through, because the notion was it was the jewel of the prairies kind of thing, right? So it was kind of interesting because the Ruby, like the initial notion was that Lacey had always wanted to buy a restaurant, couldn't afford to do one in Toronto, saw an ad for this place after this woman had passed away and came and bought it because this is what she could afford. But then I altered it to be about inheriting it from her aunt, and her aunt's name was Ruby, and I had an aunt named Ruby. It was just kind of, it was one of those serendipitous things where Tisdale, the original name of Tisdale was Dog-Hide River, and the Dog-Hide River still runs through it. Now, I didn't consciously do that, but in hindsight, I think it must have been one of the reasons that when I was writing up names, Dog River, that sounds good. That sounds like a real place. And I think that aunt storyline, once I called this the Ruby, I think somehow it made a connection in my mind to my Aunt Ruby, and the aunt storyline came into it. So that's one of the things I like about writing, when as you're writing, you start discovering stuff.
Hello, Brent here. Hey, if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you click that subscribe button, and don't forget to click the little bell notification too. That way you'll always be alerted whenever we're posting a new video. All right then.